I'm back.
The WWE in the 2000s is such an interesting timeline to look back at. Because at the start of the millennium, they're deep into the Attitude Era, truly on fire, clearly winning the Monday Night War. And by the end of the decade, Monday nights were filled with guest hosts. And unfortunately for me, the latter was my childhood. You old heads had it good. One thing that I could say remained consistent was how many iconic rivalries we got from every year of the decade. Some that changed the trajectory of many of the all-time great careers in wrestling history for the better. Other feuds that simply brought out the best out of the people involved. All of it created an absolute magic for us fans to enjoy. And look, I don't exactly feel like talking about current day WWE right now, so let's go ahead, let's get nostalgic, let's talk about the best of the best from the first decade of the millennium. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Mo if you don't already know, and this is the best WWE feud from every year of the 2000s. And of course, if you disagree with any of my picks, I don't care. But not really. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. But now, let's do this damn thing. So the year 2000 is looked at by many, including myself, as one of, if not the best year WWE's ever had creatively. And you know, The Rock is usually the guy that gets a lot of the love for holding it down while Austin was out in 2000. Obviously, he was easily the most popular guy on the active roster. But I'm not gonna lie to y'all, if you take a look at some of the best storylines from that year, a good chunk of them don't go back to The Rock. It's Triple H. Of course, you have the incredible rivalry with The Rock throughout the year, the love triangle with Stephanie and Kurt Angle. Hell, this year saw the beginning of his awesome feud with Stone Cold that continued into 2001. But for this list, I'm actually gonna choose the story that, in hindsight, set him up to be the main event heel for years to come, and that is how he started the year with Mick Foley, aka Cactus Jack. So after the newly formed McMahon-Helmsley regime had made Mankind's life a living hell in late 99 into early 2000, Foley challenged Triple H to a WWF title match at the Royal Rumble. But after Mankind was left a bloody mess by Triple H, Foley realized Mankind wasn't going to be ready to face Triple H at the Rumble. But he did know somebody who could. A more violent side of Mick Foley that had absolutely no conscience whatsoever. And man, that segment on SmackDown of Mankind transforming into Cactus Jack is an absolute all-timer. I mean, just look at Triple H's face. It's like he's looking at a ghost of his past. So then that would lead to their legendary street fight at the Rumble where Cactus Jack repaid Triple H for all the suffering he'd put Mankind through. And these two turned MSG into what looked like a freaking crime scene. But that finish? A fucking pedigree on thumbtacks because apparently the mat wasn't enough. And even though Triple H was the one to be put on a gurney, he left that arena looking tougher than ever before. But that wasn't it, because at No Way Out, the feud went up another notch. Because not only were they going to be inside Hell in a Cell, but this time, Mick Foley's 15-year career was on the line. And it was once again a classic, very bloody brawl and one of the more underappreciated cell matches in my opinion. But as we know, no matter what face he uses, Hell in a Cell doesn't always go Mick Foley's way. So after going through the top of the cell, through the ring, and taking one last pedigree, Mick Foley's career was over. Let's just ignore WrestleMania 2000, literally the month after that. Because retirements in wrestling are as guaranteed as a peaceful contract signing. But for real, after everything Cactus Jack threw at him, Triple H proved to the world that he was everything he said he was. That he was that damn good. That he was the damn game. His feud with Foley is what launched him from being just another main eventer to a potential all-time great, and obviously, he lived up to that. But this wasn't the last time Mick Foley sacrificed himself in order to create a new bona fide star. Stay tuned. You know, the WWF versus the Alliance is the easy answer here, but there's so many head-scratching things with that story where I don't feel like giving credit to things like DDP versus The Undertaker. So I decided to show some love to something from 2001 that I think is insanely underrated, which is the story between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle. After Austin's heel turn at WrestleMania, we saw this new side of him. Paranoid, insecure, and constantly needing Vince McMahon's approval. Basically in his needy boyfriend era. While at the same time, he was competing with Kurt Angle for the same thing.
I got Olympic gold.
So Austin would then actually turn on Kurt Angle and the WWF at the Invasion pay-per-view and join the Alliance. Then explaining how Vince was trying to replace him and how he didn't feel appreciated. And that would make Kurt not only a babyface for the first time in his career, but he would become this badass leader of the WWF. Which was then emphasized by their incredible match at SummerSlam for the WWF title, where Kurt was kicking out of everything Austin threw at him, to the point where Stone Cold got himself intentionally disqualified to keep the championship. And look, that might sound like some annoying shitty finish, but trust me, it's really not. I'd go as far to say it's the best match in WWE history to ever end in a DQ. Check it out if you haven't. But the next night, Angle would get his revenge on Austin and the Alliance while Milkomania ran wild, as JR would put it, putting his own spin on Austin's iconic beer bash. you know, with less alcohol and more calcium. And from here, the feud would pick up the intensity, from Austin stealing Kurt's gold medals and throwing them into a lake, to Kurt kidnapping Austin and threatening to throw him into that same lake, until Austin agreed to a rematch at Unforgiven, where Kurt would actually win the WWF title in his hometown of Pittsburgh in a really feel-good moment, just under 2 weeks after the events of 9/11 had taken place. Unfortunately though, this feud was not immune to the invasion nonsense, because Kurt would quickly lose the WWF title and then actually join the Alliance.
What kind of shit is that?
But then Kurt would actually get the last laugh at Survivor Series when he double-crossed Austin to help Team WWF win and put an end to the Alliance for good. Of course, the very next night, they basically undid all of that with another double turn, and everyone just pretended like the last 7 months didn't happen. Why? Because wrestling logic, I don't know. But listen, Austin's heel turn at WrestleMania X7 is always written off as some mistake, and business-wise, I see that perspective 100%, but in terms of what he was doing, that led to some of his best character work ever, and this feud with Kurt Angle was just an example of that. If you played WWE 2K15, first of all, I feel your pain. Second of all, you know what time it is. We gotta talk about the best friends, bitter enemy story between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So we all know their history from the late 90s as founding members of D-Generation X, but soon after, Shawn was forced into retirement after a really bad back injury in 1998. And when HBK came back to Raw in mid-02, it opened up the door for the reunion of DX. But that's when Triple H decided to stab Shawn in the back and lay him out with the pedigree. Of sorts. Because in Triple H's mind, he'd already passed Shawn by in the time that he was gone. But then things took a turn when we found out that Shawn had been laid out backstage, to the supposed surprise of Triple H. But, you know, obviously he did it. Duh. It's like when someone steals something from you and then helps you look for it. I've been there. So in the week after, Shawn let Hunter know that he was stepping back into the ring for what he thought was one last time, but not for just any wrestling match. He was coming for a fight, which took us to SummerSlam 2002, and in his first match in 4 years, Shawn Michaels proved exactly why he's the greatest in-ring performer of all time. It looked like he didn't even miss a single step, and the pop he got when he did the kip-up was deafening. And it was so cathartic seeing Shawn pick up that roll-up victory, getting his revenge for the betrayal. But because he couldn't handle the loss, Triple H hit Shawn right in his bad back with the sledgehammer and put Shawn out for what could have been for good. And while Shawn was gone, Triple H would be given the World Heavyweight Championship and had so many guys on Raw gunning for that championship. But little did Triple H know, Shawn Michaels would be another man to throw his name in that hat, which would then lead to the first ever Elimination Chamber match for Survivor Series. And of course, it would come down to the two former friends, where Shawn Michaels would win the World Heavyweight Championship to a huge ovation in Madison Square Garden, in a moment that even 5 months before seemed impossible. Let's ignore the poop tights. But unfortunately, his actual run didn't last long, as he would lose it right back to Triple H in a 3 Stages of Hell match at Armageddon. Look, we're dealing with Triple H in the early 2000s around the big gold belt, so we're not exactly allowed to have nice things. And while the match itself didn't exactly hit the levels of their SummerSlam heater or even the Chamber match, it was a solid enough temporary end to this fantastic story. And hey, it kicked off Shawn Michaels' incredible run in the 2000s, which gave me a chance to actually see him in real time, so extra points for me. But I cannot continue without giving a shout out to the SmackDown 6 and pretty much any match involving them 6 during the second half of the year. Just classics on top of classics from them. Personal favorite being that tag title match at No Mercy 2002. That's what I like to call real graps. Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle. Not even a question about it. I mean, hey, it's not like Triple H gave us much to smile about in 2003 unless you like 20-minute promos opening every episode of Raw. But over on SmackDown, we got more real graps. Lesnar and Angle are no doubt the two greatest legit athletes to ever step foot into the WWE. And no two men have come in and taken to it as fast as these two did. So when it was time for them to clash, it was bound to be magic, and they did not disappoint. And one thing for me that made this feud so dope was how they were able to flip the heel and face dynamic and keep it interesting both ways. So to start the year, Brock would win the 2003 Rumble after Kurt had dodged a match for the WWE title, and the match was set for WrestleMania 19. Mind you, the match almost didn't happen because Kurt actually broke his neck before WrestleMania and still went through with it. Salute. The match itself was incredible though, even with Brock damn near taking himself out after a botched shooting star press, which I'd argue made the match even more memorable, for better or for worse. But after Kurt came back in mid-2003, yes, this man was back in 2 months. They had actually become good friends, even after Kurt would win back the title at Vengeance 2003 in a really good triple threat, also involving The Big Show. This was until Brock actually turned on Kurt to align himself with Mr. McMahon on the lead up to SummerSlam, where they would have an even better match than what they had at WrestleMania. And Kurt would actually make Brock tap out for the first time in his career. But that wasn't it, because on the September 18th, 2003 episode of SmackDown, they'd have one more classic. But it wasn't just any match. it was a 60-minute Iron Man match. And not only was it their best match together, not only was it match of the year, but to me, the best match in the history of SmackDown. Fight me. And Brock would just barely sneak out of there with the title after hanging on to a 5-4 lead in the last seconds of that match. And usually Iron Man matches struggle to keep my interest for the whole way through, but because of how great these two were, that wasn't even an issue. And it makes me think just how much more these two could have done together if Brock hadn't just left a few months after this. But I guess we'll never know. 2004 was a really pivotal time for the WWE roster as a lot of the big names had left the company during the time. Brock Lesnar left, Goldberg left, Austin was already retired, and The Rock would only have one more match this year before going to Hollywood for about 7 years. So that meant new top stars needed to be made, and Randy Orton was one of those guys. He would go on to become the youngest world champion in company history that year and would go on to obviously have one of the greatest careers of all time. But the starting point for all of that is always going to be traced back to his amazing feud in 2004 with Mick Foley. In the second half of 2003, the soon-to-be legend killer made it his mission to embarrass Mick Foley. From punt kicking him down a flight of stairs, to spitting in Foley's face after Mick refused to fight him, and even going as far to make video packages calling Foley a coward and Randy Orton's bitch. Well, Mick could only take so much taunting and would finally show back up in the 2004 Royal Rumble and take Randy and himself out of the match. But Foley would then fall victim to Evolution and their numbers game getting laid out week after week. So Foley called up a good friend of his to reunite the Rock and Sock connection to take on Evolution at WrestleMania. It was WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Garden, the same building where Randy had kicked Foley down the stairs backstage all those months ago. But Mick wasn't able to get that sweet, sweet revenge because after an RKO, Randy Orton would pit him in the middle of the ring. And that could have been the end of it. But nah, Randy wanted a one-on-one match at Backlash to prove once and for all he was better than Mick Foley. But it wasn't gonna be that simple for Orton. Nah, this time, he was gonna have to play by Mick Foley's rules, which was no rules. In order to become this self-proclaimed hardcore legend, Randy was gonna have to beat Foley in a hardcore match. But not just any version of Mick Foley. Nah. Because like Triple H before him, Randy had put Foley through so much that he had no choice but to bring out that side of him that didn't give a damn about anybody's well-being, even his own. And at Backlash 2004, Randy Orton faced off against Cactus Jack in a hardcore match for the ages. A match that both men are on record to say is their favorite match that they've ever been a part of. And after the absolute carnage that Randy went through in this match, from the barbed wire bat to the face and even that insane back bump onto thumbtacks, he grew himself a pair and all by himself, he survived Cactus Jack. And without a doubt after this, he was a made man and well, the rest is history. And once again, Mick Foley had put himself through hell to help elevate yet another career of a future legend. And I know plenty of people give Mick his flowers for it, but to me, it'll never be enough. So, much love, Mick. Thank you for everything. Take your pick. Like, there are so many amazing yet insane storylines from this year, and I can definitely see a lot of y'all disagreeing with my pick. From the soap opera-like madness that was Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, to the real-life drama that bled into TV with The Edge, Matt Hardy, and Lita love triangle, to even the absolute insanity that Randy Orton and Undertaker put each other through throughout the year. There's just so many incredible stories. But personally, I gotta go with the masterful and meticulous storytelling that was Batista versus Triple H. For years, Batista was the enforcer for Evolution, always handling Triple H's dirty work to keep him on top. But soon, tensions began to rise between the game and the animal, with Triple H constantly talking down to Batista. And little did Triple H know that Batista had begun setting his sights on taking the throne, with fans gravitating towards him more and more every week. And things were made even worse when Triple H didn't help Batista inside the Elimination Chamber at New Year's Revolution after Batista had pretty much cleared the field for him. But then Batista would win the 2005 Royal Rumble, and Triple H would then start playing mind games with him to trick him into going to SmackDown to face JBL. But in turn, the game got played. In one of the best moments of that year, Batista would give Triple H and Flair the thumbs down and put Triple H through a table, signed the Raw contract, and the clash was set. Student versus teacher at WrestleMania. And while sure, the match wasn't no 5-star classic, it did exactly what it needed to do, which was make Batista look like a beast and crown him as the new World Heavyweight Champion. And yeah, they'd have a rematch at Backlash, which was a bit better than the Mania match, but it was their brutal Hell in a Cell match at Vengeance, the real crown jewel of this feud. The same match where Triple H had made himself a legend just 5 years before with Mick Foley. Triple H would do the same favor for Batista and easily their best match together, capping off what was a perfect slow burn story. And well, for all the frustrations that fans may have went through during Triple H's reign of terror, having this feud be its conclusion where Batista gets elevated into a megastar made it all that more cathartic. Ah man, I finally get to talk about my favorite wrestling rivalry of all time, the feud that was the main focus of the Raw main event scene in 2006, John Cena versus Edge. And it's not just because it's two of my absolute favorites going at it, but it's also because of how well their dynamic of being complete polar opposites works with each other. Both wanting the same type of success, but with different mindsets of getting it. Of course, this starts back at January at New Year's Revolution when we get the first ever Money in the Bank cash-in on a bloody John Cena, right after he had defended the WWE title in the Elimination Chamber. And from here, Edge becomes arguably the most hated heel of a generation. And yeah, Cena would win the belt right back at the Rumble 2 weeks later, but in hindsight, it didn't really do any real damage to Edge's credibility. And even when they went on to do different things at WrestleMania 22 that year, Cena in the main event against Triple H, Edge having his insane hardcore match with, oh, there he is again, Mick Foley. From that point forward, Edge was constantly a thorn in John Cena's side. First, you get a triple threat match also involving Triple H at Backlash, which doesn't get talked about enough. Then when Cena goes on to defend the title against Rob Van Dam at One Night Stand, guess who cost Cena the championship? And after Edge wins back the WWE title from RVD in a triple threat, also involving Cena, these two go on to make each other's lives hell. Hotel rooms being invaded, dads getting slapped, girlfriends being called every name in the book, Edge even getting thrown into the Long Island Sound. And then with just another perfect layer to this story, them two beating each other for the WWE Championship in each other's hometowns. First with Edge retaining at SummerSlam in Boston, and then the feud being capped off for the time being in an epic TLC match at Unforgiven in Toronto, where Cena gives Edge one final FU off the top of the ladder to win back the championship. For Edge's career, this feud with Cena cemented him as the perfect main event heel for any top babyface for years to come. And for John Cena, it gave him that defining rival that was absolutely perfect for his babyface dynamic. And as a whole, it brought the very best out of each other in almost every aspect of their game. And, you know, it does kind of suck that we won't have one last interaction with them during Cena's last run, but we'll always have this to look back on. So 2007 wasn't exactly a year with any deep or elaborate storylines. It was just a lot of basic but entertaining stuff going on. And that year, Batista and Undertaker would have a feud that probably made Big E the happiest person on the planet. It was simple. These two big dudes want the World Heavyweight Championship and they're going to beat the brakes off each other for it. Case in point, like all of their matches. Starting off with their WrestleMania 23 barn burner that some people still argue to this day should have main evented that show. And considering how good the actual main event of Cena vs. Michaels was, that is really saying something. Quick side note, the segment of Batista asking for his rematch on SmackDown is the first ever segment of pro wrestling I ever watched, so there you go. But then that would lead to their very underrated Last Man Standing match at Backlash, which would actually end in a draw after Batista spears Undertaker off the damn stage. But then Taker would have to take some time off to nurse an injured biceps. But when he came back, they just picked up right where they left off with another banger at Cyber Sunday, where Batista would actually win clean, which was a rare sight for the dead man. And when Taker tried to get his revenge inside Hell in a Cell at Survivor Series, the match, once again, did not disappoint. But that would actually be used as the catalyst for Undertaker to start chasing Edge going into the next year. Honestly, I wish I had more to say about the story, but there wasn't much more to it, which isn't exactly a bad thing. It's just a bunch of bangers from two guys that had really good in-ring chemistry that I recommend y'all check out. And well, it's the first feud I can remember playing out in real time, so it's always gonna have a special place in my heart. Man, you take a look at Chris Jericho's career and there's so many different versions of him that you can call his best ever. But for me, it doesn't get any better than 2008 slow talking, super serious, suit wearing Chris Jericho. But we don't get that without the super layered, brilliant feud with Shawn Michaels. And at its core, it was a clash of morality. And if you break it all down, Chris Jericho was 100% in the right. Shawn did fake an injury to beat Batista at Backlash and then continued to lie about it as the weeks went on. And when Chris called him out for it, everyone painted him to be the bad guy. And even after Shawn admitted to the lies before their match at Judgment Day, the fans still loved Shawn and villainized Jericho. So when Chris snapped and threw HBK into the Jeritron 5000 during an episode of the highlight reel, he embraced that unwarranted hate. So then you had their super bloody match at the Great American Bash, where Jericho's goal was to end the career of Shawn Michaels, going after that eye that he had injured after he threw him into that TV. And it seemed like Shawn was actually going to call it quits at SummerSlam, but then the feud flipped on its head when Jericho, quote-unquote accidentally, punched Shawn's wife in the face after Shawn ducks. And just like that, the retirement was right out the window. And even with the new PG constraints, their unsanctioned match at Unforgiven the month after that was as intense and as physical as it can get. With Shawn beating Jericho so bad, the ref had to pull Shawn off and end the match himself. But on the very same night, Jericho actually found his way into the championship scramble main event and weaseled out of Unforgiven with the World Heavyweight Championship. And that only added yet another layer to what Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho had going on, culminating in their fantastic ladder match at No Mercy 2008 for the championship, where Jericho just barely slips away with it. And look, I know the word gets overused nowadays, but if you like cinema in your wrestling, this is the perfect rivalry for you to binge watch. And even if you just like great in-ring work, I mean, Come on, it's Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels. You don't need me to sell you on that. Well, now I get to talk about my second favorite wrestling rivalry of all time, and only reason it's second is, well, it ends in heartbreak for your boy. But there's no way I can leave CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy off this list. It's the summer of 2009, I'm just out of school, and my hero, my GOAT, Jeff Hardy, after months of trying to climb back to the top of the mountain, he becomes the world heavyweight champion, and all is right in my world, life is good. And then this guy comes in, cashes in Money in the Bank, and spoils the party. The fuck I do to you? But soon the feud actually becomes more than just about the title. It was Punk versus Hardy as total opposites. Punk being that straight edge, clean living guy, and Jeff the guy who lives in the moment. And week after week, Punk just keeps poking at Jeff, judging him, tearing him down, and slowly becoming the villain that everyone already decided he was. And let's be honest, kind of like Jericho the year before, Punk was not in the wrong. He had cashed in Money in the Bank the year before, and nobody had a problem then, but because it was Jeff Hardy, he was supposed to feel bad for it?
Yes.
But soon, every promo, Punk got more and more condescending, basically wagging his finger at Jeff like an angry substitute teacher. And it wasn't until Jeff won the world title back at Night of Champions where Punk just finally snapped, turned on the fans, and that's where we started to see the CM Punk that would eventually be the leader of the straight edge society, getting more and more vicious with his words about how the straight edge lifestyle was the only way to live. And it would all lead to their banger TLC match that closed SummerSlam 2009, where Punk would win the championship back. And you know, that was the end of the feud. They went their separate ways, they never wrestled each other again, and y'all are gonna make me talk about the steel cage match, aren't you? So yeah, in one of the worst nights of my life, they'd have one more match on the following SmackDown, with the stipulation that the loser would have to leave WWE entirely, and Jeff lost. I'm still not over it. But hey, he was back the next week. Nope, it's just this piece of shit rubbing it in. You know, back on track. So while yes, I'll never fully forgive Punk for what he did to 7-year-old me, there's no denying the perfection of this feud. Like the character motivations, the matches, it just all clicked. And that's why it still sticks with me to this day, for better or for worse. But you know, they do say what goes around comes around. I was there for that, by the way. Now we're even, Punk. You bitch. And folks, that is the best WWE feud of every year of the 2000s. Please let me know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree, you know, what things you would change, all that good stuff. And let me know if y'all want to see one of these for the 2010s. Already in the plans, but of course, let me know if y'all want to see it. And yes, before y'all ask, I will include NXT in that one because, I mean, there's certain years where giving the main roster any kind of credit would be damn near a participation award. But I appreciate y'all for watching the video. I know I've been gone for a long ass time, but I promise the next video will not take 3 months or even 3 weeks. I'll be back real soon, but I appreciate y'all. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you enjoy, and I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm out of here. I'm gone.